Hi, I'm Brian Lambert, and welcome to The Facts as we know them for August 24th, 1984. The Facts is the bi-weekly news discussion show that cuts through most of the fodder, shall we say, and gives you the candid background of the stories you've been reading about. With us this week are Eric Eskla from WCCO Radio.
Left my fodder at home this week.
And Steve Thoma from the St. Paul Pioneer Press Dispatch. They're thoroughly amalgamated now.
You write for the Dispatch, right?
I write for both.
Yes.
Do you? Okay, good. More money to doing that?
No.
Okay.
Gee, they ought to get something.
More money.
The show, for those of you who have been following it, has always been on the borderline. This week we have completely descended into topics of native interest to all of us here, gambling and sex. We're starting with Steve. You've been covering the budding scandal down in Shakopee over the racetrack. What I'm curious about is, what was the biggest surprise that this fell through? I mean, was there any doubt that these people, maybe I should say, was there any, was it a total surprise that these people would not be able to put the money together? It's been portrayed that way.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate. They would still be able to put the money together.
But
they just want to get cheaper money.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a real big surprise. Some members of the commission want to paint it as a scandal or a surprise, and it's not. It's only a scandal to those bidders who didn't get the track and want to do anything to shoot down the Shakopee group. It's a perfectly legitimate business exercise.
They want to take industrial revenue bonds, and the reason they didn't do it at the beginning was that Congress, in the meantime, has passed the law allowing them to use the bonds for that purpose. Is that what happened?
Right. They couldn't use this low-interest bonding at the time of the application, and so they had to tell the commission they were going to go out and borrow money from a bank and borrow it from themselves and borrow it from radio reporters and the like. And it's, what happened was simply Congress approved this low-interest bonding. They have the option to use it. It's cheaper, less interest expense, so they're going to try and do it. I think the commission will approve it.
Excuse me, it'll mean what then for the track financing? Better?
It means better financing. It means a lower break-even point, whereas they've been talking that they need to have 9,000 people come every day and bet $135 each. Now they only need 8,000 to bet $110 each before they break even. So it looks good on paper. It looks great.
You know, the sense of the story has been that that they never had the money together in the first place, and that's why they were falling back on this.
That's
the smell of it.
That's the smell of the story from the Star and Tribune, not from the Pioneer Press. In the 2 years I've been in this town, I've never seen a story that's been covered from more divergent angles, where you can pick up the two papers in the same morning and read totally different stories. A perfect example was a week ago. They had a committee meeting of the Minnesota Racing Commission. I came back and wrote a story for the morning paper that said the track will be built regardless of whether they win approval for this bonding scheme. They're going to build it, no matter what, even if they have to use the original plan. And the Star and Tribune had a story that said it's going down the toilet.
Yeah.
One of them had to be true.
How does that happen?
There's only 10 or 12 people watch this, right?
How does this happen?
Sloppy reporting. I obviously think I was right. I think time is bearing me out and just showing my stories to be a more accurate portrayal.
Well, I suppose if the reporter listened to the disgruntled losers in the franchise, the disgruntled losers probably would want to portray this more as a scandal, more that the financing plan is going down the drain. Somebody being used here, Mr. Thoma?
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
I think you probably hit it pretty well on the head.
Did I?
Those four groups in Egan and Woodbury who didn't get it, of course, they're painting this as the worst thing in the world. That if the commission approves this change in bonding and financing, the track will never be built and everyone's going to get rich who shouldn't get rich, and you and I are all going to go broke. And I don't think anyone cares. All anyone really should care about is whether the track is built, whether it's financially healthy, and whether it creates a breeding industry in the state.
If you were down there to drive by Shakopee down there, would you see bulldozers and stuff? Is construction going on now?
They've been working every day. They're spending $2-3 million a month out of their own money so far. I think one of the only problem with this, as the story started evolving, was that the people from the racetrack wouldn't talk. So we were stuck talking to everyone else, commission members from the state and staff people and the losers who didn't get the track. And that was a really bad mistake on their part, a public relations mistake. They should have come forward and talked to us right away.
The commission does what now? The commission members must approve the new financing scheme,
Right.
and what's the time for that?
They have to do that by September 15th. They'll do it Tuesday. The report came out, the proposal came out today. The new financial consultant has it. It'll be done Tuesday.
Can we talk a little bit, Brian, about the future of horse racing as a industry in the state?
Sure. I was just going to say that your view of this is sort of blunt. My other question was that the way that the Star and Tribune has been painting the story, I was led to believe that somebody was going to take get a political hatchet through their neck, for it, either the head of the commission or some politicians around there. What you're saying is that's really not a liability, then?
I don't think so. I don't think at all. At the very least, the commission members, that's the state government, has been doing a fine job on this. I think they're asking the right questions, and that is, if you have this new financing, will the track still be built? Will it be feasible? And will it be successful? Because that's what the state's interested in. We want it to be honest and successful so that we, the taxpayers, get a lot of money from it.
Yeah.
We get our tax buck out of it. And as long as they're satisfied with that, I think everything's fine.
You need 8,000 people a day to go through there to spend more than $100 a person betting. Now, a friend of mine whose father works out of Atlantic City and is very interested in casinos and racing and gambling type enterprises. This fellow's father said that he didn't think in Minnesota it could go because he didn't see the hardcore daily racing form type of fellas that you see at a Belmont or tracks like a Pimlico or tracks like that. You don't have the real hardcore daily racing guy that's going to go there and do this for a living. And without that hardcore of daily people, that it really can't go as anything more than kind of a diversion. And that this is why this person didn't get involved in the negotiations for the franchise, because he just didn't think that Minnesota was the right social climate for horse racing. What do you think about that?
Well, I know there's a lot of fear that Minnesota has this Norwegian, Scandinavian, hard-working Lutheran work ethic, where they're just not going to go out and risk their money on a horse. I think they're going to go
the
nuts.
the quarter a day grannies aren't
Now,
going to
how do you base that on? You're from Chicago, where of course there are people that will just risk the rent money at Arlington Park and so
They'll
forth.
risk someone else's life. They rob them to pay for their gambling debts. Right.
But this is Minnesota. This is the same reason I said 2 weeks
It's hard
ago,
to imagine
the
that,
lottery ain't going to go here because of the same my same feeling that this is not a Minnesota thing.
the stiff moral fiber.
And I wonder about horse racing in the same. But you think they're going to go crazy? Why?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Because it's fun.
Is it?
I mean, most of these people have never been to a horse race. I had not gone to a horse race until I was probably 19, 20 years old, and I just love it. And even if you only bet $2...
But you got to bet more than $100 to make the nut.
Average.
Okay.
Average.
Yow.
I mean, that's,
So you have a hard time. I mean, the average sporting event takes how much money out of each fan's pocket? A North Stars game, maybe $25. I would think that would be somewhere around what they'd be willing to spend at the track.
Is there going to be a family-type atmosphere?
I mean, to average it out, somebody's going to have to be out there spending $200, $300, $400.
That's what you need.
That's simple. The horse owners will do that.
Yeah.
Hennepin County, as you well know, has the number 2 population of horses in the country after Los Angeles County. Horse owners will go to the racetrack, whether they're raising thoroughbreds or just pleasure horses, because they have a personal interest in horses. And there is a certain thing of the sport of kings and all that, that's very attractive beyond the betting. Just going to the track is very exciting. And as I mentioned, this whole thing about the Norwegian ethic and all that, you can have as much fun betting on a horse betting $2 as $500.
Is the track going to be such, the whole track area, they can have like picnic grounds and amusement, and so it makes it more of a family thing, so that the ones that want to bet can go bet, and then the mom or dad and the kids can go in the park? Is it going to be multi-facility? Go to Valley Fair, I suppose.
They've got a number of phases, don't they? For the basic construction. And
they
then
hope to
adding
expand if the money is there,
Yeah.
if it's successful. One of the things, I went on a trip about 2 years ago to racetracks all around the country for the paper. Rough
Now
life.
that's a junket.
They shot that around to every reporter. He was the only one who would take it.
That was tough. That was tough. And what every track told me is that
They reimbursed your gambling debts, right?
they did, but they didn't have to. They
Business
didn't lose
expense. It was a
anything.
write-off.
The most important thing about a racetrack, everyone tells me, beyond keeping the races honest and interesting, is the facility, keeping it clean, having good, cheap food, those things that will bring families in. And if you go to Arlington Park in Chicago, which is the track I'm most familiar with, there are a lot of families there. It's not everyone with dark shirts and white ties and no necks. There's a lot of those people there. They're my friends.
Well, I wonder if the Minnesota Zoo runs at a deficit. I wonder if the racetrack can run at a profit. I mean, the zoo is something that's like a Minnesota thing. You'd go to the, Minnesota families would go to the zoo.
How often have you gone to the zoo in the last
Twice.
Twice.
I
I try
don't
to
have a
explain to anybody from out of town how to get to the zoo.
I've got no family.
Yeah,
well,
they forget.
I don't know.
This has not been brought up much, but I think it's worth considering that society is changing. There are a lot more single people, single adults around now than there are family people.
Well,
There's probably a couple of them in this very room.
I'm going to go a couple times to the racetrack and see how I like it, but in the summer, I'm going to be at the Metrodome for the Twins. I wonder if the Twins are going to be hurt. Calvin has always said this, that the Twins might be hurt in attendance by the racetrack. Do you see it overlapping, similar type crowds for the two sports?
Oh, yeah, I think I know you're a perfect example. There are weekend days when I'll go to one or the other, and I can't go to both.
Sure.
But the track will draw people from around an area. They'll draw from southern Canada, around Winnipeg, where they have a track, and there are people interested in racing. They'll draw people from the Dakotas who will not be baseball fans. They have a pretty big area to draw from.
And how long will it take for us to get a prestigious race? I mean, when will the Minnesota Derby be spoken in the same breadth as, not the Triple Crown races, but in some of the other Marlboro Cup and some of the other second-tier races? Is that possible? Can we get national?
You can do anything with money. Arlington Park in Chicago just 4 years ago started its race, the Arlington Million, threw $1 million into a horse race, which is about 5 times as much as in the Kentucky Derby. And it's getting national attention.
Are they hoping to do that in Minnesota?
I've not heard of any plans, but I don't know.
Well, that would make sense, seems to me.
Yeah. Well, the dark side of a family is pretty much down in the same area. Eric, you've been down in Scott County?
Well, we've been over in Carver County, in Chaska, where Kathleen Morris, the Scott County attorney, the trial's been moved from Scott County to Carver County because of pretrial publicity, and Robert and Lois Bentz begin trial probably next week now, opening arguments next week as we speak, on the first of 25 charges, 25 people being charged in more than 400 counts of this sex ring with children, alleged sex ring with children. And it's going to be quite interesting. It's going to be, I was in court this week for pretrial motions, and the attorneys in this case are very combative, and they're very much on line of sniping at each other. The judge is kind of an acerbic guy who is not going to take a lot of nonsense. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, if you can use that term in a case of as disgusting as this. It's going to be fun, though, to watch the courtroom maneuvering. You've got a couple of interesting elements here. You're going to have...
Are we talking high-priced legal town for the Bents?
Barry Voss and Earl Gray, I mean, they've been around. They're a couple of veteran defense guys. They're not, I don't think, in the Meshbesher class, but they're pretty good. They certainly handled themselves quite well in court the other day. And you have Judge Martin Manser, who struck a blow for reporters and the public, I think, the other day when he said that when these children testify, reporters and the public will be allowed in the courtroom. Kathleen Morris...
Certainly part of the defense strategy.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. The attorney said, hey, these two people have been tried in the press for a year or 8 months. Let's shine the light of day in on the proceedings when they're actually on trial. And the judge seemed to agree with that and didn't buy Kathleen Morris, the Scott County prosecutor, who claimed that having the children particularly testify in open court would, as she said, magnify the trauma of their experience. These are all alleged victims of the sexual abuse. So you're going to have at least 8 children, alleged victims, testifying. You're going to have James Rudd, the infamous now James Rudd, who apparently has a long line of priors sexual abuse of children, and who bargained down 108 counts against him to, I think, 1 or 10. 9 of them are going to be probation, and 1 is he may serve some time. And he has at least 60-page statement that in pretrial Ms. Morris took very dramatically. It says, here is James Rudd's statement, and threw it on the defense counsel's bench and says, there's more where that came from, and if you don't like this, we'll double the charges against you. And then she said, and you're not going to try the prosecution in this case, we're going to try the case. And they were sort of feistily back at her. It's going to be quite interesting, and the jury is being selected this week is mainly parents. The defense wanted parents on there who know that children apparently have the ups and downs of children and child raising. And you're going to have interesting comments on the difference between affectionate cuddling and these sexual harassment, abuse, and the charges, some of them are very vile.
Yeah.
Nothing I want to say, even on cable TV.
Yeah.
Really, they're not
Eric, one of the
charged,
things
but they're
that
tough.
kind of surprised me, they've been talking about how difficult it is to choose a jury. Why didn't they move this to Duluth or Rochester or something a long ways away? I mean, in a sense, they just moved it next door.
Yeah. Well, in the jury selection this week, reporters always seem to think that the world revolves around the newspaper and the radio and the television. And this week, in questioning jurors, they found that while everybody had heard about the case, that these good people of Carver County had not really formed an opinion or a judgment, at least said that to the judge and to the attorneys. I don't think that's really a problem. In Scott County, it would have been next to impossible, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the trial starts this coming week, and it should be very interesting to see how Kathleen Morris handles herself. And how,
From knowing something about her, she seems to have been jacked up for these trials for a long time back.
She's good, she's tough.
Prepared for them.
Yeah, and they're going to question the technique. Apparently she did a lot of what is called work product, working with, as you would with any witness, working with the witness to prepare the case. And she's had to, of course, work with these kids. And the defense was intimating this week that, well, she's planted ideas in their head, and these are impressionable kids. And just by talking to them and preparing them for trial, she's kind of instilled in them that what was an innocent incident was in fact sexual abuse, and that's going to be the underlying current. That and James Rudd's testimony in indicting these people.
Does she have anything like videotapes, tape recordings of their initial questioning of these children? Well,
that's one of the issues that's going to come up, I think, is the number of interviews and the style in which the interviews were done, and whether there are either tapes or notes of the interview. She said in pretrial motions this week and in a hearing that a lot of the interviews with police officers, there are no records of.
Yeah.
It was just, and the defense was wondering where that was. So she's anticipating, and I think defense, at least in a subconscious way, is going to put her on trial to an extent in trying to not only cut down the credibility of the kids who are going to testify, but also the motives of the prosecutor.
Yeah. This would seem to be, with all the trials that would likely spin out of this case, and be a pretty expensive proposition for the counties.
They expect it to last at least 2 weeks.
This one.
Yeah, and there are 24 more to go, but I would guess some will plea bargain. I mean, what was good for James Rudd will probably be good for some of the others. And I will have to see what happens, but it's the reason that this is of note is that these are the first of the trials in an investigation that went back to last October.
Yeah. Is this going to be your beat now for
I think I'll be down there from time to time. Like I say, the crimes, the accusations are, heinous and really disgusting. But for fans of courtroom maneuvering and for just people that like courtroom drama, I think this is going to be highly watchable.
Yeah.
You ever walk away from a trial like that and find yourself not knowing how to react when a 5-year-old child is sitting next to you? Or?
Well, this has been so pervasive down there, and Kathleen Morris has always asked, is it something in the water in Scott County? And she always says, no, Jordan, Minnesota, where all this allegedly took place, is a fine place to live and so forth. And it's just that even in the smallest of town, people abuse children. And
well, her argument is that it goes on everywhere and then it hasn't been properly prosecuted.
Yeah, that's what she would say.
Yeah. Well, I've interviewed her, and that was pretty much the way she looked at it. And, I mean, she was pretty frank, too. She thought that it was that way because men are basically the prosecutors and tend to find the whole thing as disgusting as you say, and anybody does, and prefer just not to deal with it. It's a tough thing because they have to stay with it for so long and just wallow in this stuff.
I just wonder how well the children are going to hold up and how credible a kid's going to be to a jury. And I think that's really an unanswered question, and it's going to be quite interesting to see because these children have, these are, obviously traumatic if the charges are true, and if these are indeed victims of sexual abuse. It's a very traumatic thing, and Kathleen Morris was quite emotional talking to reporters the other day about wanting that courtroom closed. Just think of you as an adult having to tell the uttermost secret, disgusting sexual event of your life as an adult in an open courtroom, and just magnify that to what a child might think.
Let's run through that, Eric. Tell us.
Well, I don't have that.
Secret, disgusting sexual secret in your life.
Well, I see, it traumatizes me, just you asking me that right here on the show. You can think what it would...
Because we know what it is.
Yeah. But it's going to be quite interesting to watch, and I hope everybody, I hope the children aren't traumatized anymore by it.
Yeah. Something I found personally traumatic was watching the Republicans the last few days on television.
They're doing great down there. I really do.
It's quite a show, isn't it?
Steve and I cover, on kind of an auxiliary basis, we cover politics, and I think we can watch with a sort of a distance eye, but don't...
Now, if any of the main, the first line reporters fall in their tracks, will you be immediately flown down to Dallas to, you know, pick up the microphones and...
if they fell down there, who'd notice? There's no news anyway.
Don't you think Reagan and the Republicans are doing a real good job of just turning the Mondale into Swiss cheese this week? I mean, I sit there...
Mondale's doing a terrible job of defending himself.
Even so, but I just think this Democrats is the party of fear and despair and gloom and doom, and we're the Republican Party of hope and optimism.
And it would put money back in your pocket.
Yeah, I just think they've done a great job of skewering Mondale, and as Steve says, Mondale is just helping them.
That notion that Mondale is already at a low ebb in his campaign seems to be taking hold. You know, that he's gone nowhere, and he's made some grave logistical maneuvers in doing nothing, errors of omission.
Sure.
Well, beyond just the obvious mistakes of Burt Lance and the Ferraro taxes, the campaign seems to have no initiative. He sits at home and meets with 20 or 30 experts each week on farming or taxes. And I thought their whole selling point was that this was a man who knew everything already. He's been through Washington and all this. He knows the issues. And here he is hyping the fact that he's meeting with all these people and learning now. He's already been nominated. It's time for him to be out in the South and the West talking about these issues. The other thing is, I think his staff has let Reagan get away with far too much. Just far too much. And of course, now in typical Republican, they use surrogates to go on the attack so Reagan can still look like a nice guy. And they've been attacking Mondale and the party for being the party of despair, complaining about America, complaining about the way America is. And I think someone from Mondale's side, another candidate, another politician, should have been out there the next day saying, we're not complaining about America, we're complaining about the administration.
Yeah.
We're complaining about the government. They let him get away with each step of this so far, and they're never counterattacking. Obviously, from a reporter's point of view, I want them to attack simply because it's something to cover. It's been hard to cover Mondale in Minnesota because he's not doing anything.
He's so isolated.
He's isolated. We get the staff. They don't say much.
Arrogant. Aren't they arrogant? Don't you find that?
I think they're arrogant.
And they seem to be very, you know, I think Andrew Young touched a real nerve with this
uppity white boys.
smart-assed white boys comment. I mean, and I've talked to guys like Tom Oliphant and Dan Balls from the Washington Post and the Boston Globe, and guys that have covered presidential campaigns before, and they say that compared to like Carter in '76 as an example, that Mondale is very much surrounded by this palace guard, and Richard Moe, a longtime Mondale advisor going back to his days in the Senate, has been complaining to reporters privately that the inner circle is just giving Mondale dumb advice, and you have a lot of real infighting in the campaign, and I don't think Mondale is capitalizing on the real good momentum he had out of San Francisco. But I want to say something else.
What could he have done? I mean, immediately hit the road?
Well,
I mean, besides praise his argument a little bit
when he was
better.
hitting the road, he was doing well.
There's no vote. He's going to win Minnesota. He doesn't need to be here.
Yeah, when he was hitting the road early, right after San Francisco, he was doing well. They went to Texas, they went to Mississippi, and by all reports, it was quite a successful swing. Maybe he should be campaigning with Ferraro some more.
Letting it rub off.
Yeah, because she seems to be the lightning rod, the magnet for the ticket. I wonder, though, this week, if Gary Hart isn't somewhat vindicated in saying, I'm more electable than Mondale.
Oh, okay.
Because I think you could arguably say that Hart and Reagan have similar type economic approaches, at least not exactly, but sort of similar. And yet Hart is more moderate on the social issues and on the arms race
And
issue.
he's strong on defense.
Yeah.
But he's yet strong on defense. If the Republicans, I'm sure many of their leaders are thinking, if we had the Reagan optimism with a little more moderation on the arms race and on these prayer and school type social issues, we would have every person 18 to 35 years old in the world voting for us, the upwardly mobile people. And I think because the platform is so radical on some of the issues, they're missing a chance to really create momentum for the next many years. And I think Hart might have been able to do that on the Democratic side as well, and I wonder if he might not be vindicated at the end of this as the more electable Democrat. I don't know.
He may be.
Yeah.
You know, really, throwing the doors of speculation wide open. Should the Democrats be wiped out in this election, what would you imagine happening? I mean, would there be a wholesale house cleaning of the party, the Mondales?
I think Geraldine Ferraro will be a candidate for president in 1988. And I don't think she's going to win necessarily. She might, but I think she'll be out there. And I think it's going to be de rigueur now for the rest of our political lives to see a woman on the ticket in either president or vice president. You're going to have a man and a woman on the ticket, I think, for all time to come now.
Steve, how did you think she handled the big news grilling on, was it Monday now? Yeah.
Well, I think she handled it well. I think she always That's what she does best, is handle questions. What she does worse is when she talks off the cuff, and that's where she makes mistakes like volunteering her husband's tax returns before she knows he'll agree, and making comments about, you know, how it is to be married to Italian men, which backfired in some circles, according to surveys. But she's sharp, she's good on her feet.
Yeah.
And she's honest, and she's candid, and I think people sense that.
Yeah.
You don't get that with Mondale. You get more of a measured response.
I was going to say, one of the reactions I heard to Ferraro here often is that she's sassy. People like that.
Yeah,
they
like a little
that.
brass.
And that she comes back quick at these people. And like you say, you know, Mondale seems too cool, too mannered, and you know,
well, but he's
too
right. I
homogenized.
mean, Steve, he just said it so well. He just said it so beautifully that here's the guy with
How beautifully did
well,
he
with
say
all
it?
this experience and all this ability to handle a crisis, and you won't have to train this president on the job. And here he is stumbling and bumbling on every conceivable crisis. And here's Ferraro handling herself like just an old trooper. And Mondale's supposed to have that role, and he's just stumbling left and right.
Yeah. Well, you know, speaking of his campaigning on the fact that he's experienced and he's been through all this and he's ready, that's a point I think the Republicans have let slide, and that is Ferraro is not nearly as qualified as George Bush.
Not even
I don't
close.
think anyone can argue that. Anyone, you can say she's sharp and she's intelligent and she's right on the issues or wrong, but no one can argue that she's got the qualifications that Fritz Mondale has or George Bush. And Mondale made that his major campaign, that he didn't have to train on the job. He was ready. She's only been a 3-term congresswoman.
Do you have a couple minutes?
We have a minute left. I was going to ask you about Joan Grow up in Duluth and some of the campaigning she's been doing, the state of her campaign against Boschwitz.
Talked to some DFLers in the important 8th district.
Yeah.
It looks now as if Grow's going to win rather easily in the primary against Mattson, that Grow is going to beat Mattson in one of his prime areas, the northeastern Minnesota area, by maybe 55 to 45. So Grow will win the primary over Mattson, I predict. But Boschwitz has made 6 trips up there in the past 6 weeks. He's going to hold Grow maybe to like 50-50 on the Iron Range, where guys like Perpich and Bob Short have won 8 and 9 and 10 to 1 in their various battles. So based on that, it could be a blowout statewide. And the all-male business, one of the guys up there was saying to me today that their staff is all-male. It's the same Warren Spanis inner circle that lost the primary to Perpich in the governor's race a couple of years ago.
They have a perfect record.
Yeah. Yesterday in Duluth, Joan Grow held a news conference in front of a big ship, as politicians are wont to do at the Duluth Harbor, a big foreign vessel. And everybody started laughing during the news conference while Joan was talking about import, export, trade imbalance or whatever. And 3 working gals were climbing off the vessel. And we're on the 6 o'clock news in Duluth. As Joan is talking in the background of the ship, 3 working girls are climbing off the ship after visiting some of the sailors. And one of the veteran political guys up there said it's kind of epidemic or endemic, is that the word, of the Grow campaign, that she just doesn't seem to be able to kick it off against a very well-oiled Boschwitz machine. This DFLer was quite pessimistic about Grow's chances.
Well, at this point of the campaign, the Democrats do not look to be sitting very high in the saddle.
And Mondale can't help the Minnesotans very much. He was supposed to help pay some of the campaign debts. Grow only got, they were $80,000 in the hole, the Grow campaign was, out of the DFL convention. And Steve Novak, their campaign manager, says they just got done paying it like yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's why they haven't had any TV on. They hope to have some commercials on by Labor Day, but by then, you know, Boschwitz's media has been so terrific. Who knows if it'll be enough?
He seems to be saturating CCO.
Yeah,
I listen to him as much as I do Herb Carneal.
And he's got his super duper milk house at the fair. I know Steve will be up there drinking the root beer flavored milk.
Going right from here.
Thank you both. Thank you, crew. Thank you, John in the back room. We will be back in 2 weeks with another edition of The Facts as We Know Them. Good night.